trying to think the funniest thing about Fox News having to attack Antifa is the fact that Antifa is pretty much predominantly made up of white males and white females inside America. Now, if Antifa was made up of blacks or non-whites, like for instance, Hispanics have a group, La Raza, obviously blacks have a group, Black Lives Matter, Fox News would easily be able to demonize them, just like Trump can come out and try to attack them and everything. Because right now, Fox is trying to do whatever they can to play up how racist the left is, despite the fact the Republican Party right now basically harbors white nationalists within it. And this person, Tucker, or whatever his name is, Tucker Carlson, he openly espouses white nationalist viewpoints on his show, just like President Trump does. But the funny thing about Antifa to me is the fact that, very simply, you have no idea who they are. And that's the beautiful thing about social media and modern activism behind the keyboard gangsters, keyboard warriors. The simple fact of the matter is you have absolutely no idea who these people are. So the thing about it is, just like the Ku Klux Klan hides behind those big, funny-looking cone masks, the Antifa members are doing basically the exact same thing. And all you got to do is order a lot of those Guy Fawkes V for Vendetta masks, and they'll be right out there come election day. They'll be right out there arguing, fighting against the fascists. Because ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, you know, the fascists and the racists, they come out to these marches in order to promote racism and fascism. If Antifa's coming out to fight against racism and fascism, well, I'm pretty sure you can already figure out exactly whose side I'm on. But what I really wanted to talk about is what happened on Sirius XM Radio today on the Clay Kane Show. In the URL section, I'm going to leave a URL towards a YouTube video where Omarosa made the mistake of coming on Sirius XM Urban View, which is a predominantly black liberal radio channel. Now, I mean, there are some people there like Karen Hunter who claims that she's the party of Lincoln and claims this, that, and that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the current crop of racists and white nationalists that are occupying the Republican Party, the GOP, absolutely does not in any way speak for those blacks who do consider themselves to be black conservative Republicans. And I could include myself in that. So basically, I call them liberals because for the most part, they're voting Democrat and they're going Democrat on every single issue unless they see a Republican option come up. And right now, I'm pretty sure there's no Republican option that they see. So anyway, Omarosa decided to go up against Clay Kane. At one point, I guess he got disgusted with her lies and her constant, Omarosa, when I look at her, I see the same exact sociopath that I see when I look at Donald Trump. Omarosa considers what Diamond and Silk were doing to be a hustle, and she herself said she's not going to knock their hustle. Now, the bottom line is, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're Republican or Democrat, because there's a lot of Republicans I agree with, there's a lot of Democrats I agree with. But the thing is, if you're wrong, you're wrong. And if you're promoting someone who has clearly expressed misogynistic views, if you're promoting someone who's clearly expressed racist viewpoints or tried to hide behind nationalism while expressing racist viewpoints or promoting white supremacist racist ideology, well, if you're going to do that, then you're going to obviously eventually have to end up arguing with people, especially in the black community, who feel that you are a pariah. And Omarosa is doing whatever she can to make as much money as she can before the lights go out. But she went on the Clay Kane Show, and hopefully you can listen to that entire interview. Hopefully you have Sirius XM. But she made a fool out of herself, and when he went after her and didn't back down from her, she basically lost her mind. And that's what they're going to be talking about tomorrow. Now, frankly, I think this is the first time I ever bothered to mention her name. But the thing about it is, to me, she seems to be, first of all, to be nothing but an opportunist. But she also seems to be a distraction put forward by Trump while they're trying to slip that guy Kavanaugh through. Because ultimately, the goal of the Republican Party, or at least the people voting for it, is to do whatever they can to either overturn Roe versus Wade or to attack abortion rights. But I guess the question that I have to ask is, if Kavanaugh is confirmed and he becomes the next Supreme Court justice, I have to wonder if the new Supreme Court at that point would even bother trying to overturn Roe versus Wade or bother trying to attack women's rights to get abortions. Because the simple fact of the matter is, let's say they did make abortion illegal. Women aren't going to stop having abortions. I think a perfect example of this is the Philippines. When you look at the Philippines has nationalized abortion as illegal. It's illegal to get an abortion in the Philippines. But that doesn't stop these young girls from getting abortions. It just doesn't stop them.
There are plenty of articles online talking about different countries that have attempted to outlaw abortion. And what you end up with is women doing more and more desperate things in order to ensure that they will not carry certain pregnancies to term. First of all, one thing you need to understand is that in the Philippines, it's like there are girls as young as 12 engaged in sexual intercourse. In certain islands, it just happens, especially considering that most of the people there are indigenous people and they are separated from the cities. Now, I hate to use the Philippines as an example, but there are other countries. I could talk about Thailand, I could talk about Cambodia, I could talk about Vietnam, I could talk about parts of Africa, I could talk about Mexico, I could talk about South America. But the reason why I wanted to pick the Philippines is specifically because their abortion rates have been increasing. Now, you make abortion illegal, all that means is that these females may try to hurt themselves. They may try to punch their stomachs. They may try to throw themselves off of staircases in order to land on their stomach. And you're putting these women at risk of having to become desperate in order to get the abortion that they desire. If they decide that they've been raped or whatever and that they don't want to carry abortion to term, a fetus to term, they're not going to do it. There are mixtures. They call them abortion elixirs. There are mixtures of drugs that they can take in order to induce abortion. And if they catch it early enough, it's going to come out anyway. But if they catch it early enough, they can get it while it's very small and mucus-like, the embryo that's inside. And the thing about it is, it's like, is that the America that we really want to live in, where women quietly and silently are destroying their bodies? Because the thing about it is, I have to side with President Bill Clinton when he said abortion should be legal, safe, and rare. Rare as in we want to do everything we can to make it so that women don't have to do it. Legal in that we don't want to make it so that women have to turn to these, brutal methods in order to stop pregnancies. And safe in that the government is basically registering people who are getting abortions and keeping track of how many abortions are actually gotten. Because if you really think about it, when you have to go on the black market for anything, it's under the table. Everything's under the table. Whether it works or not, you might get sick, you might die or whatever, but for the most part, nobody will know what happened. So the thing about it is, at least when the government's doing it, at least we know exactly what's happening. At least we know exactly who's getting what abortion and why. They can check and see if there's been a crime committed. Like, for instance, we wouldn't know whether or not there was rape or incest unless somebody came and specifically told the hospital that they wanted to get an abortion because they were raped or because there was incest involved. Then the government itself can send out the police and they can decide what to do. Now, if these women are terrified of the fact that they can't get abortions, then what they're just going to do is they're just going to go underground. I think conservatives, for the most part, understand a very simple law. Prohibition does not work. They tried prohibition, and all it led to was bootlegging in Chicago with alcohol. They tried prohibiting guns. What did that lead to? It basically made it so guns became even more ubiquitous. People trying to make guns at home. People printing out fucking guns on their goddamn 3D printers in 2018. So prohibition doesn't work. They tried to make it, prohibit the automatic rifle, and then somebody comes up with a fucking bump fire stock, which does the same goddamn thing. And you could say, yeah, well, it doesn't really pull the trigger by itself. It really forces your finger to... Nobody fucking cares about all your goddamn bullshit. The simple fact of the matter is, when somebody's spraying a fucking rifle at you from half a mile away in the top of a hotel, You don't know whether it's automatic or semi-automatic. Bottom line is you're probably going to get hit. Nobody gives a fuck about your semantics. So what I'm basically saying here is that there's been a lot of news coming out, and, you know, it's like I don't report on it every single day. I wish I had a radio show or something, which I don't. But technically, this is kind of like that. But, you know, I just don't report on it every single day because my, you know, my politic videos don't get as many views as some of my other videos. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed, I just crossed, I believe, how many subs do I have? I think I crossed like 38 or 39,000 or something like that. Just by that I did South Korea Red Light District in Yeongdong-po. This video got 785,000 views, and it probably is going to cross 1 million by the week's end. And I've gotten over 1,000 subs from that video alone, and it's like I'm on my way to 40,000 subs. But it really doesn't matter because ultimately you get paid for clicks rather than subs. So my bottom line is this. It's like a lot of news happening. And the one thing I wanted to lead off with was the way I felt about the Russian scandal. Democrats and liberals have run out of plays in their playbook. They have absolutely nobody speaking for them at the head of the DNC because Hillary basically left it in shambles. So what they would have you believe is that Trump is very close to Vladimir Putin and that the Russians are the reason why that Trump is in the White House. Now, anybody who's watched my channel long enough knows that I was calling Trump's win long before he even got the nomination for the GOP. At least 2 years prior, I was calling that Trump was going to end up winning and he was going to win the presidency. I knew that because what I realized was on the left, there was no enthusiasm for Hillary. And I realized that if forced to choose between Hillary and Sanders, I realized that somebody who was making absurd socialist, communist claims about all the free shit that he was going to give us, I figured that the younger generations were going to go for it, but I figured the older generations weren't. The problem is the older generations vote in blocks, and the younger generations, it's very difficult to get them to turn out. When they turned out for Barack Obama, they turned out 10 million plus, unbeatable numbers. Even if every single conservative and every single right-winger out there turned out to vote for McCain-Palin, they still lost, and they lost by about 10 million votes. When Obama ran against Romney, that margin was slightly narrower because the election itself wasn't as exciting. 5 million, or about give or take 5 million fewer people voted for Obama that time around. So his lead over Romney was narrow. But when you look at the actual voting numbers, you can see that even at the strength of the right wing's turnout, they still couldn't face Obama, and he got not only the Electoral College, but the popular vote. But when you look at Hillary versus Trump, what you see right away is that there was a tremendous drop in enthusiasm for the election. Now, if you're looking at this graph and thinking the numbers are off, you're actually right. And the reason why is because this graph was published, the one you're looking at right now, it was published almost directly after the election was over. And that was before they had tallied all of the votes and realized that Hillary had more than 3 million more votes than Trump had by the time that all the votes were finally counted. But even with Hillary's 3 million more vote, which I completely attribute to California and New York having so many people in them, even with that, the bottom line is Trump received fewer enthusiastic voters than Romney got. Now, let's think about just Romney versus Trump. Romney got more voters enthusiastic about him than Trump got. And even Romney got more voters enthusiastic about him than McCain got. But the bottom line is you can clearly see by the turnouts that the liberals really had the win on their side. The problem is so many of these morons who wanted Sanders, who didn't realize that, first of all, Sanders would never have been able to get anything done with a Republican Congress anyway, because all they would have done was they would have blocked everything he was doing, just like the last year that Obama was in office. But the bottom line is, what you should be blaming is all of these people who didn't show up to vote. Blaming the Russians as some imaginary phantoms that I've never seen a goddamn Russian in my fucking neighborhood. I'll just be perfectly honest. Blaming them is a cop-out.
And the thing about it is the real people who should be blamed is Bernie Sanders, who was nothing more than a spoiler in that election, and blame Hillary for being such a shitty candidate and having no energy and not being able to get the enthusiasm which she should have had. But if you really think about it, how much enthusiasm could somebody have really had when you've got this black man with a Muslim name and an angry black church behind him able to beat Hillary's ass in Iowa, which is like 95% white? If whites came out to support Obama before they came out to support Hillary, then what expectation did you have that Hillary was going to magically come back and be able to beat this other asshole who's up there talking about how great America is and how he's going to make America great again, when all he's ever done in his life is dodge the fucking draft and get deferments while somebody like John McCain was over there actually fighting and getting tortured by these Vietnamese and whatnot? So if she couldn't take on Obama with that background, what made you think that she'd be able to beat this asshole? Now, I guess most people would think, well, he sounds stupid, he sounds crazy, so nobody's going to vote for him. But I don't think you people understand that most people don't drink Diet Coke. If you give them two choices and those two choices are both bad for them, a lot of people typically pick the worst possible choice, i.e. drinking the regular Coca-Cola and getting diabetes.